Gear shifting is best known from driving. Depending on road conditions, the driver or the car itself shifts between gears. On a flat highway, the highest gear will get the highest speed, while when driving uphill, shifting to a lower gear may increase the speed, as this exerts more force to the wheels. The optimal gear is not always the highest, but decreases with the slope of the hill. Do living organisms have the potential to shift gears? The answer is yes. The environmental bacterium Clostridium jundalii, for instance, contains alternative redox reaction networks in its genome. These produce different numbers of ADP per molecule of acetic acid. The intestinal bacterium Escherichia coli has various terminal oxidases enabling gear shifting in its proton pumping and thereby in its ADP synthesis. The Archaeon Saccharolobus sulfatericus contains GAPN, which catalyzes the direct oxidation of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate to 3-phosphoglycerate bypassing the ADP formation by GAPDHPGK. The choice between the two routes enables the organism to switch gears. But what induces living organisms to shift gears? Growth is driven by the Gibbs energy of catabolism delta GC. Gibbs energy is the part of the energy that can be used for ADP synthesis and then growth. In catabolism, this Gibbs energy is partly converted to Gibbs energy in ADP called delta GP, whilst the rest is lost. The ADP Gibbs energy is then used to drive growth. The force ratio X represents the ratio of the Gibbs energy of ADP synthesis to the Gibbs energy of catabolism. Catabolic flux through pathway 1 could be represented in this equation. L1 is the catalytic capacity of catabolism, and it can be written as fraction of a total catalytic capacity L of catabolism, while N1 represents the number of ADP molecules synthesized per unit catabolic process. The flux of ADP synthesis minus JP1, which is driven by delta GC, is larger by a factor 1. The parallel pathway 2, again perfectly coupled to ADP synthesis, follows the analogous equations. The resulting effective stoichiometry is defined as the total ADP synthesis flux divided by the total catabolic flux. Panel A shows the predicted decrease of ADP synthesis flux minus JP, and the flux ratio stoichiometry N with increasing force ratio X for an example in which N1 is smaller than N2 and there is no specific uncoupling mechanism. This decrease of the stoichiometry Nx with increasing force ratio X derives from the phenomenon that with increasing force ratio, a smaller and smaller fraction of the phosphorylation flux flows through the high stoichiometry pathway. This corresponds to the phenomenon in driving, that the car will shift to lower gear when it drives more uphill. That was the MNET analysis. Now the PNET analysis. Being a phenomenological stoichiometry, Z was considered immutable. We break with this tradition and focus on gear shifting, that is, on variations of Z. The green line in panel A shows that at low force ratios, having the three pathways operate in parallel should be better than just operating one of them individually. The purple line in panel A shows that a variomatic regulation of Z should produce a higher ADP synthesis flux than any other individual pathway with a fixed setting of Z. The corresponding purple line in panel B shows how the variomatic flux ratio stoichiometry decreases with increasing force ratio. In our research, we also consider the gear shifting by changing the catalytic capacities of pathways with different stoichiometries, that is, when gear shifting by changing the factor phi. This figure plots the ADP synthesis flux versus the force ratio for various magnitudes of phi, at fixed magnitudes of the ADP stoichiometries N1 and N2 of the two pathways. Again, at low force ratios, the higher stoichiometry pathway produced more ADP synthesis than lower stoichiometry pathways, and at high force, this inverted. The lines intersect at a single point, implying that, if the degree of coupling were allowed to vary, it would make no sense to gradually shift to lower stoichiometry with increasing force ratio. At one critical force ratio, it should be best to switch immediately from the highest to the lowest stoichiometry pathway. Do you want to show your research progress to more scholars? Contribute an entry that will be linked to your paper on the encyclopedia platform, providing an opportunity for over 35,000 scholars to access and explore your research. Have you ever tried to show your latest research in a vivid way? Encyclopedia's SciPlayer provides a service with which you can transfer your research to a live video format. Do you want to publish a new paper? Encyclopedia has an international, peer-reviewed, and open-access journal. Do you require a discount when you publish research in journals? Anyone who contributes to Encyclopedia can obtain vouchers for MDPI Journal's article processing charges. Encyclopedia aims to create an open-access knowledge-sharing platform for all scholars. To find more information, search for encyclopedia.pub.